Hello, everybody. Welcome to Camel Call Friday with Evan Budrovich. I'm Chris Hemeyer. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, a favor if you could. You can search Camel Call Podcast on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We will be there. Give it a subscription and also rate it.
Comment it.
Rate it. Do it.
Send
we
it
know
to your
that
friends.
you listen. Yes, definitely. Hey, we want to apologize that last week we didn't have a Camel Call Friday. We're going to say it was because of the Thanksgiving break. It was actually because we recorded one. Evan was great. He made time for it. I was so terrible on it that I decided not to do it. Also, we didn't, have an interview for that one. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. With Evan Budrovich, I'm Chris Hemeyer. And one of the things that we did a little bit of a fall sports wrap last week, and I've been able to think more about it.
Whack.
I've been able to think a little bit more about it. And I know that none of our fall sports ended up qualifying for the NCAA tournament, but if you're a faithful listener to this show and have given us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify podcasts, you will know that the regular season really is the true champion. And as we've seen in the World Cup, especially when we're dealing with soccer, one thing that goes wrong, you could be dominating a team. One thing that goes wrong, one player that goes hot, and you lose that game, you lose your chances for advancing, everything like that. So the fact that volleyball and both soccers both won the regular season while both being one of the favorites to win again, while having a target on their back because Campbell is leaving for the CAA, and Campbell in all of those sports has been very good for, at the very least, a couple of years. What an accomplishment that all 3 of them won a regular season title.
The one bid league is difficult. It is hard to get to the NCAA tournament. I don't care if you're the best team or the worst team. You have to execute in that one weekend. What women's soccer did after their slow start, truly incredible. They dominated the Big South, and they took care of High Point in the regular season. Men's soccer, that was another fantastic run. Yes, they lose in a final, late-night game, give up a goal early. Things happen. You start pressing and you give up the second goal. And then volleyball, if the tournament's at Campbell, they probably win it.
There's no doubt.
Right? And they go to High Point. They beat High Point in the regular season there. They actually sweep the series. So, not to give you a baseball analogy, but they won 2 of 3. So, my books, they're the tournament rep.
Yeah.
But they didn't win the NCAA matchup. So, that'll happen. I think overall, though, you look at 3 trophies. Not that regular season is the most important, but it's certainly a valuable thing to collect.
And look, you're not going to see us argue and diminish the fact that if one of the Campbell basketball teams or our wrestling team that has won 4 straight SoCon championships, they're in the Southern Conference for it, if they win and punch your ticket to the NCAA tournament,
We'll be screaming
we're
their
not going to
praises.
sit here and say, you know what, a one big lead really stinks or what have you. But I mean, it just goes to show you so much that these teams won 1 less trophy. The men swept last year, but you saw a couple of teams with volleyball now go to the NCAA tournament. So I think some people think, hey, it wasn't as good of a fall. It was as good of a fall, even better, because you got those 3 regular season championships. And again, in the one big league, it makes it very, very hard. But congratulations to all our fall sports. And now they can turn their attention to the CAA. Schedule should be coming out soon about where they're going to the fall, and all of a sudden it's about making some different hotel reservations
Booking
in
those
some
flights.
different
Yeah.
parts of the country, some flights. And then again, what I've been telling people as well, I think sometimes people concentrate on the fact whether they view this as good or bad. There's going to be games in Boston. There's going to be games in Philadelphia, in the D.C. area, in Long Island, up around New York. But also, too, 2 hours away, we're going to be playing UNCW, which in most sports is a big rivalry. In some sports, I would say it's the rivalry. You're going to play College of Charleston, NCA&T moves into this, and Elon, which is a very similar in so many ways to Campbell. So you're not just going to the Northeast, which I think is a positive in many things. You are also reigniting a rivalry, and you're going to start some as well, because actually with the teams in the state, you're going to be traveling less.
What I love, too, is the men's soccer champion was Elon. So think about, you trade out High Point, you insert Elon.
Right.
That's going to be a very similar rivalry. Women's soccer, Monmouth was the regular season champ. Drexel's really good in that league, too. So kind of hard to equate distance-wise. But then in volleyball, Towson, 1 state away, if not 2. So the regionality of this league still exists. William & Mary is the long trip in the South Division. College of Charleston, great place to see my boys in Southern Charm, and then get some biscuits in the morning and enjoy the town, the Holy City. Do you still have that Holy City trophy we won with men's basketball?
Your boys, I don't have that trophy. Your boys with Southern Charm.
My boy Shep.
Did you watch Southern Charm? Are you made to watch Southern Charm? Are you in the same room when Southern Charm is on?
Jenna, my girlfriend, has turned it on over the months, and I slowly went from just having it in the background to putting my prep down for these basketball games and kind of watching
Okay,
it.
all right. I'm not just saying this to make you feel better. I was the exact same way. Bravo is on a lot in our house, and again, my wonderful wife, who's a third grade school teacher, after some of the days that she has, she can turn on whatever she wants. But you're right. That is, how can I say this? And
then Summer House
and
and
not
Winter
put
House
her down.
go off.
No, I will not watch those. Southern Charm is not as bad as a lot of the other shows, and actually I do sort of like how it's on because they do have some interesting personalities on that. We are opening the door here.
Andy Cohen,
Andy
us,
Cohen,
has the 411.
St. Louis's own, Missouri's own, Andy Cohen, but puts it all together. Yeah, it's the least bad of the Bravo shows. My wife is going to get on me about that. Hey, back to the sports, football. In the CAA, in the CAA is not a one big league. This year, CAA sent their automatic qualifier, which is the same thing that the Big South has gotten forever, but they sent 4 other teams into the NCAA FCS playoffs.
And did well.
That's what's fun, yes. And that's what's fun because it's not just all or nothing winning the league there. It's getting in the top third of the league, and you've got a good shot to end up making it to the FCS playoffs. Now, there aren't very many cakewalks or easy games in
There's no Robert
in the
Morris
CAA. No, there is not at all. So,
but how about this?
That'll be
Delaware finished 6th in the league, not even 5th, and got the 5th bid.
Yeah.
Then won at St. Francis and now play in the second round of the tournament. We saw New Hampshire. They played NC Central, similar opponent. They did well. And then William & Mary, who's a nationally ranked team, will host our boys at Gardner-Webb coming up this week, the Barbecue Bowl.
Right, Gardner-Webb getting a win as they beat Eastern Kentucky, and the FCS playoffs finally rubbing off a little bit on the FBS. And we'll bring that up again. This is an FCS school. We shouldn't be talking about a lot of FBS, but Evan Budrovich is from LA. He went to, as they call it, the real UFC, and actually they took a South Carolina to court, and they can claim USC, and South Carolina cannot. And then, of course, you think it's funny because, Carolina will call themselves Carolina. Of course, you're up here. There's only one Carolina, and poor South Carolina, quote, unquote. But anyway, your USC Trojans in position to what is in the last of 2 years now of a 4-team college football playoff.
Remind me, Chris, because Missouri was in an SEC title game. What is the feeling like when you compete for a championship? Because USC's had a recent stretch here of 4 years where we have done nothing
long time
on the football gridiron.
It's been a long time.
And you guys were in the inaugural SEC title when you joined, right?
When Missouri, and I'm a Mizzou grad and grew up in the college town where Missouri was, so we've been watching Missouri sports for a long time. But Missouri, when they first got in the SEC, nobody remembers this. It was a very weak SEC West, which it's usually weaker, but Georgia was down, Florida was down, South Carolina, Tennessee was down, and Missouri won back-to-back years in that division. Now, I will say it's a little different because each time they were playing Alabama, and each time they were 20-point underdogs, they hung with them each time, but it wasn't like, oh, man, I'm really nervous because Mizzou is going to take down Alabama and win the championship. So I don't know, but so much on the line because a loss and USC most likely drops out of the top 4.
Which makes the news of the 12-team playoff coming in 2 years a godsend.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. It seems like, with the college football playoff, and they will say all the time, they're like, hey, remember, and I remember because growing up during the 90s, before they had the college football playoffs, it literally was, will number 1 and number 2 play each other if they are in the same bowl that all their conferences were aligned with? Number 1 and number 2 didn't always play each other, even if they were undefeated, because the winner of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 always went, Pac-10 back then, always went to the Rose Bowl, and the winner of the big, and it just had to line up in the stars. And so they say, now we're making it so 1 versus 2 will meet each other. I don't think they had to go to 12 teams. I think 8 teams would have been good because you get yourself all of your Power 5 conference champions automatically get in there. You have room for a group of 5 champion if you say the top 6, which is what they have done. And then you get the other 2 teams that are usually good enough. You look at in the standings right now, who's 9, 10, 11, and 12. Kansas State would be in the
Okay, here's
the
my
playoffs.
counter argument to that. If you want to boost attendance and notoriety for the games, you keep campus sites for the first round. And with 12 teams, your top 4 get a bye. They can still go to the Rose Bowl and the Orange Bowl and the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, or whatever they call it now, the Cheez-It. I think there's 2 Cheez-It Bowls this year.
There's 2 Cheez-It Bowls this year.
But then you have 12 play 5 at the 5's host site, which makes for a great atmosphere. That's a really cool December game.
But they're not going to do that, right? They're going to tie them all to bowls, are they? Or they haven't decided yet?
The first rounds are at the home site.
The first rounds are at the home side.
Now, the second round and then the semifinals, those are all at the bowl game destinations. But like FCS playoffs, I know Campbell's looking to get there next year. It is a really neat atmosphere to have your home stadium all the way to the championship.
That's true.
In Texas. You can host all the way through.
And then you go to Frisco. So someday. Anyway, okay, little FBS football talk for you. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was delicious. I had stuffing, which I've learned there's 2 types of stuffing now. There's like the stuffing little kiblets, and then there's just thick stuffing. And the difference is it's almost as dramatic as Eastern Western North Carolina barbecue.
So you had 2 kinds of stuffing for Thanksgiving.
I had to make sure it was the right kind.
Of course you did. I'm
a big ham guy, so I had a nice deep cut of ham with some pineapple on it. It was delicious.
You're not a turkey guy?
I mean, I do like turkey, but I'd rather get a Costco chicken than get turkey. Personally,
you'd rather have a Costco chicken than turkey, even on Thanksgiving.
Well, I mean that's a good point. I'm just saying. You always ask, Evan, what's your favorite food? And I can never give you an answer.
You really can't. You really can't. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to talk about, Evan? I know what I want to talk about. Basketball.
Oh yeah.
Because again, you and I, and it's awesome that between the 2 of us, we have seen and been at 95% of the men's and women's basketball games in the last 8 years. This is my 12th season where going to pretty much every game, home and away for the men, obviously following and staying up and doing some games with the women. You have been primarily the voice for the women over those 6 and 7 years as well. We'll go back to the one bid league, whether you like it or not. The winner of the Big South Conference tournament, which again is going to be 1 week, both the men and women, at the Bojangles Coliseum in Charlotte. It was really fun. Like they really did a really, really good job. You go in there and you're like, this is something. This is really something. It's in downtown Charlotte.
It and the student sections with the bands and
they did a really good job. They did a really good job. Yeah, they did a really good job. And the winners of both those tournaments are going to go on to the NCAA tournament. But the regular season, and especially the non-conference season, and especially this year for both the men and the women for Campbell, and I put all that out because a lot of people ask us about things, about the basketball teams, and this is really a time for the team to figure out what are you going to do, how are you going to get the Campbell men have 8 new players on their team. They've got 4 freshmen and 4 transfers and guys that are playing a lot. And so there has been some pretty darn good results. They should have beat NC State. They missed some free throws down the stretch or they would have done it. They beat App State, a team that beat Florida State. They beat Stetson, a team that ended up beating Florida State and beating USF. You can't do the transitive property, I realize that. But at the same time, they've had some good wins. They've had some not-so-good losses as well, but trying to figure it out when you get into conference, which starts in the last week of December. This year, even conference, you have a lot of time, what you should do, improve, and tweak, because in the men's side of things, there's 10 teams. You'll play a full round robin, which is brutal as far as going everywhere on the road, coming home. You're playing 18 games. It's so tough. So just to warn everybody, there's going to be some days and there's going to be some quote-unquote teams that Campbell played during the conference season that they're not going to get the win because of the travel schedule or where they were on Saturday or what's going on in school and everything like that. But if you figure out your team by the time you get to March. That is the goal. And so don't put so much into, okay, well, what is the team doing now? What is the team doing? If they win all their games, great. If they lose all their games, maybe there's a little bit of problem. If they're kind of in between, a little up and down, which both these teams are right now, I think take a look at the positives because that really kind of shows you, at least right now, where the ceiling is.
So at this exact week last year, Campbell women's basketball was 3-3.
Yeah.
And you'd go, okay, 3-3. They beat a couple non-D1s. They lost to ACC schools. How good are they actually? Well, you know what they finished with? A 22-8 record.
Yeah, and they won the regular season.
And they went 15-3 in the conference. So this growth takes time. And I was talking to Ronnie this week gearing up for the Coppin State game, and he even said candidly, our team is too young to have all the answers. And outside of Shai Tooley, they don't have the answers right now. Now, he thinks by December they'll get better, and Christabel Azuma, who's been really good, will develop, and the point guard play will get better with Audrey Fuller as she grows into that role. And he said by December, when you see us on the 29th against Presbyterian, we'll be ready to roll. But it's going to take a month of getting through this. You play every 3 days, it feels like. You hardly get time to practice. You're basically just prep, go to Olive Garden, and then prep for the next game.
The famous pregame meal. And Campbell, too, is going to be on the road. And you know, Evan, when you travel with these teams, I remember growing up, and especially, you know, Mizzou basketball was really good when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and so you watch a lot of games. It's like, okay, it's the number 1 team in the conference on the road versus the number 8 team in the conference. You're favored by 12 points, and you lose. And how hard it is, especially in college basketball, to win on the road. When you think, it's all about the atmosphere, and you have people yelling at you in the bands and stuff like that. There's not a lot of terribly hostile atmospheres in the Big South, but man, you know what? The night before, you get on the bus. Sometimes you go 4 hours after you've been in class and practice all day. You go and you stay at a hotel that's not, you know, it's a good hotel, but it's not your own bed and everything.
It's not the Four Seasons.
Yes, you wake up the next morning. You have study hall. You're doing that. You are so thrown off, and then it's like, hey, go beat this team that slept in their own bed, that knows these rims, that know this place, and go do it. When you get a road win anytime in college sports, but in basketball, that's amazing. So everyone calm down, especially when teams are on the road. It's tough. And I tell you that because men's basketball is on the road now.
For a month.
Yeah, for 3 out of the next 4 games. Some tough teams at East Carolina, at Evansville. Evansville is not a tough team. They got to go all the way to the other end of Indiana. I mean, you throw a stone and you're in Tennessee, and then at Georgia Southern. So, again, places where you can, if you get a win in any of those games, awesome. If you don't, you know, it's all about March. It's all about building up to March, and especially this year with both these teams figuring some things out.
Do not look at Campbell men's basketball or women's basketball's record at the end of December and judge the caliber and the talent of the team.
And you can look at other Big South records, too, because there's some. Yeah, there's some.
UNC Asheville has to play 4 to 5 games a year.
Right.
Now, they beat UCF, but sometimes you lose those games. Gardner-Webb is 1-6. And they're probably the best 1-6 team on the men's side you will see in the country.
No doubt.
Because they play North Carolina and Duke every year, and they lose by 12. They cover the spread, by the way, which is great for my friends in the desert. But they're a really well-coached team. So if you look at Campbell and go, they're only 3-3. Well, it takes time. You play different opponents. You play the non-D1s. It does develop over the next couple of weeks.
All right, you guys can't see this because it's not a video podcast yet, but Evan has a tie on, and
Jerry Garcia, my friend,
and a little Jerry Garcia tie, and a little bit of a beard coming in. Evan can grow a beard, and man, we know way too much about each other. Evan can grow a beard. His 5 o'clock shadow is like me growing a beard after a month and a half, and that is a slight exaggeration.
I remember when COVID started, you grew a beard for about 2 months, and we met in May in the office, and I had like a 4-foot beard hanging from my neck, and you had just started your COVID beard, which is sort of like it is now. It's nice and filled in, but you know, it wasn't very thick. It made you look very chic and
it beats shaving. Okay, you know at the beginning of the podcast where I was like, hey, on Apple and Spotify, rate the podcast. Maybe don't rate this one, but next week we're going to have on, it's official, our athletic director, Hannah Bazemore, is going to be on the podcast next week. Evan and I will be on the podcast, too. That's the one you should rate because that one's going to be awesome. And, of course, congratulations to Hannah Bazemore. Anything else you got for me, Evan?
So when you go to East Carolina this week, are you hitting up Parker's Barbecue pregame?
So Stan Cole, of course, historian, family man. He is Campbell Media Communications. He has been here since the 80s. He threw out a barbecue, and I thought I knew all the good barbecue joints in eastern North Carolina. He threw out one that he said has been recommended for us to go on the way. I will not remember the name of it right now, but I'll give you a review because we're stopping it somewhere, but it's not one of the ones I know. Parker's, though, is my go-to in Greenville.
Right off, is that 264?
It's one of those roads.
Yeah.
There's like 4 of them there.
You could take
now.
8 different routes to Greenville.
Yeah.
To get to the games.
Yeah. They didn't give us a parking pass. That's all I'm saying. If we win, it's going to be a revenge win.
Did they give you a quarter, though?
Yes, they did give me a quarter.
Quarter. That's the infamous joke. No
ECU. Quarter. Hopefully Campbell can go at ECU, win that game at 7 o'clock tonight, which is Friday night. And then our first home wrestling match of the season, finally.
Wait. Me and you in the sumo outfits.
No,
wrestling in the academic circle. I saw the promo this week.
Yep. There is a promotion for students. You come, you get to wrestle in the sumo suits. There's going to be a cash prize. We won't be in the sumo suits, but we will see Campbell host an ACC team. Virginia comes here. A Virginia team that Campbell beat last year.
Yep. So NC State with COVID comes down in
right.
a rescheduled match. And then UVA, which not only a great atmosphere, that's a winnable opponent. You could get major reputation points. This is a nice week for Campbell Wrestling.
Yeah, no doubt. So Campbell Wrestling will finally be at home. If you haven't been to a wrestling match, if maybe you don't understand it, you should come. It's really something. And then we'll take a little bit of a break for finals. Both teams on the road in the middle of next week, and then there is a finals break. But this Friday Camel Call podcast doesn't take a break unless I'm so terrible because we had to tape early in the week on Thanksgiving.
I have to study for my accounting final.
Oh, that's right.
I'm applying for my MBA.
Yeah.
2 semesters in, so I have finals.
Yeah,
I now
just
empathize with these
slide
kids.
that in right there.
You know, these kids always talk about the student athletes. Well, I have to study for finals and play a non-division one on reading day or something, and I go, oh, that's not too bad. And then you prep for finals yourself, and you go, oh gosh, this is quite a task.
How is going back to grad school after all these years?
This is online asynchronous. You do it at your own pace, and there's no in-person lecture. But
really?
That's an option you can take.
Yeah.
I like to kind of read the notes at different times throughout the day.
So is it like video lectures?
Video lectures and then notebooks you read, or like PowerPoints.
Really?
And you do quizzes each week, and then you have a test every third week with little projects like discussion posts.
Do you like it?
I do. Brittany Staves is in the program with me.
Okay.
She does a couple online classes, and then
women's basketball player. Very good.
Women's basketball. And there's, I think, 7 football players in it.
Really?
Which gave me a sigh of relief. Not because it's a quote unquote easy class, but then I knew it wouldn't be the hardest class.
We have a lot of very smart football players. Like our student athletes are actually students and athletes.
So when I was at USC, that was not the case.
No.
And if you saw any football player in the class, you prayed to the heavens and knew that you were going to get an A or a B in this class.
Oh, man. And before the next podcast, I'll call Evan and catch up on all this stuff so you don't have to listen for it. He does announcing. He does NBA stuff. He is social media for Campbell University.
You can come by my office.
At Campbell
I'm
EDU.
in the warehouse by the baseball field.
Right by the baseball field. You'll either be in the press box or in the big metal building. All right. Thanks, Evan. This was fun. And so much better than last week's podcast that was just awful. I was going to have to do so much editing because everything I said was wrong. You're like, don't you mean that? All right. Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't rate this podcast. Rate next week's podcast.
But subscribe to the podcast.
Apple, please keep us on. Apple and Spotify, you can subscribe. Also, we've got a playlist on YouTube. For Heaven, I'm Chris. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Don't rate us. Subscribe.